If you've been practicing IELTS listening, you will notice that sometimes the answer options are very tempting, but they're wrong. These are called distractors, and this is what leads to mistakes. There are 4 types of distractors, and that's what we're going to look at in this video. Before we look at the 4 different distractors, those misleading answer options, I want to play a little game with you. I'm going to show you a question from IELTS listening. With no audio, I just want you to look at it and tell me which answer option you think is correct. So, type of delivery chosen, plane, train, or truck. Which one do you think is correct? The answer is you have no idea, and you should never ever use your intuition when you're looking at one of these IELTS listening questions. It's basically impossible to choose from what you see, okay? It's just guesswork. You must listen in order to answer the question. So don't use your intuition. You should also never use your background knowledge. Take a look at this question. What nutrient does Dr. Peterson recommend before running a marathon? Fat, protein, or carbohydrates? I don't care if you're a doctor or a dietitian or an Olympic marathon runner, you should never use your background information, your background knowledge to answer one of these questions, okay? So no intuition, no background knowledge. That's what you have to do in IELTS listening. Okay, let's take a look at distractor number 1. One of the ways that you can make a mistake in IELTS listening. Distractor number 1, similar sounding words. One of the ways that you can make a silly mistake in IELTS listening is by mishearing an answer option because the correct answer option sounds very similar to an incorrect answer option. Let's do a little practice listening question together. Okay, listen carefully.
And how much do you think the package content is worth?
That's a good question. Well, I suppose the guitar and lamp are worth about $1,200. But with the books as well, I guess about $1,500?
Great. And where will you be sending the package to?
To Austria.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so did you hear Australia or Austria? These are 2 very similar sounding countries, and this is one way that you can make a silly mistake in IELTS listening. That's pretty simple. Let's take a look at a different type of distractor. Distractor number 2, already mentioned words. So this type of distractor is the most common one in IELTS listening. In fact, it's in almost every single IELTS listening question. That is, you're looking at a question, let's say a multiple choice question, and you hear one of the words actually mentioned, and you think to yourself, well, he's just mentioned that. It's written here as a possible answer option. That must be the correct answer option. Not necessarily. Let's take a look at this question and do one together. Listen carefully.
Okay, so you have 3 options for freight.
Could you please explain that to me?
Sure. So you can elect to have your goods sent by plane, which is the fastest and safest, but also the most expensive. Or you can choose to have them sent by train, which is safe and less expensive. And finally, you can send your things by truck, which is less safe, but much cheaper.
Yes. Sending by truck can take far too long. I'm in a bit of a rush, so I'll go for the fastest option, please.
So you may have noticed there that the speaker actually mentioned one of the answer options, but it wasn't necessarily correct. Let's take a closer look. So here the speaker says, sending by truck can take far too long. So is this the right answer? Is truck the correct answer? Well, no, because then he says, I'll go with the fastest option. And the fastest option is plane, or as the speaker says, the quickest. So here we have an example of an answer option that is not correct. It's been put there to throw you off, okay? Because then the correct answer actually comes next. This is extremely common in IELTS listening. Okay, before we look at distractor number 3, I want to talk to you about our fantastic live classes on E2. If you find it a little bit difficult to prepare for IELTS, like you don't know where to start, or maybe you're lacking a bit of motivation, our live classes on E2 Test Prep are the way to go. They happen twice a day, every day, with expert teachers, and they touch on every part of the test, including listening, as well as writing, speaking, and reading. The teacher will go through everything you need to know before your test so you feel confident. Sign up and join the live classes at e2language.com. Distractor number 3, synonyms. So a synonym is a word that has a similar, if not the same meaning as another word, like big and huge, or beautiful and pretty, or smart and intelligent. And sometimes it can be a little bit different. Like you might say, for example, in the question we looked at, something like plane or by air. So they're kind of different words, but they mean the same thing. They're synonymous. Let's take a look at one of these questions and try to do it together. Listen carefully.
Hi everyone, my name is Tom, and today I'm going to talk to you about meditation, which is a great way to decrease your stress and improve your well-being.
So here the answer is A, because psychological well-being and mental health are synonyms. They basically mean the same thing. So the speaker said one word, but on the question was written the synonym itself. This is a way that they can get you, right? Or that you can make a mistake. Now, sometimes it's not just the answer options that will have synonyms, especially if you're doing a short answer question. The question itself will be paraphrased or use synonymous language. Let me show you what I mean. So listen carefully. This question says, learning to meditate demands a great deal of what?
In the beginning of your meditation practice, you need to maintain a high level of concentration because the mind will wander from one thought to the next.
So the answer here is concentration, and that's what the speaker said, but the synonymous language was actually in the sentence itself. Compare these two. The question said, learning to meditate demands a great deal of, and the speaker said, you need to maintain a high level of. So it's actually the question that had the synonymous language. Okay, so we've done similar sounding words like Austria and Australia. We've done already mentioned words, and we've just looked at synonyms. Let's look at the fourth way that you can make a mistake in IELTS listening. Distractor number 4, negatives, or the use of the word not. So when I say negative, I'm not talking about positive or negative or good and bad. I'm talking about negation, where we negate something with the word not. So for example, I can say, this is not a glass. This is a mug. This is not a glass. This is a mug. And in IELTS listening, you might write down the word glass when I've said it's not a glass. You see what I mean? Take a look at this question here. If meditating for extended periods, you should avoid sitting on the what? Let's do it together.
The vast majority of people will have no problem sitting on the floor to meditate, but if you plan to meditate for more than 10 minutes, then I recommend using a cushion so you can elevate your hips above your knees for greater comfort. Those who are injured or inflexible should use a chair to meditate.
Notice how in this question, the question itself didn't say the word not, because it would be too easy if it just said not. Instead, it used the word avoid. We could write it this way. If meditating for extended periods, you should not sit on the what. So in IELTS listening, they don't just say not because it's too simple. There's a variety of different ways that they can negate something. Here's a list of critical words. They might say avoid or never. Or sometimes they'll use what are called prefixes, which change a positive word like hydrate into a negative word like dehydrate, or regulate to deregulate, or accelerate to decelerate, or disable, disallow, disassemble. Insignificant, inflexible, invisible. Illegal, illiterate, illegible. Irreversible, irregular, irresponsible. Mistrust, misspell, misdiagnose. Unclear, uncooperative, or unavailable. So they are prefixes where you change a word from positive to negative. Keep an eye out or an ear out for those. So this stuff's complicated, right? But this is where in our live classes, when you get to actually practice this type of question with an expert teacher and the expert teacher explains why it's wrong and this one's right, that's where you get the aha moments. And this is where you won't make the same mistake in the actual test. Okay, I have one last special distractor. Special distractor. So I was going through some official IELTS listening material the other day, and I noticed this one, which is really kind of tricky, to be honest. It almost sounds like a negative, but it's not. And it's not a double negative either. Let's do one together and I'll show you what I mean. So listen carefully. What two factors can make meditating difficult?
So, when you start out learning to meditate, you might think, wow, this isn't hard. My mind is completely silent. But, of course, that's your mind doing the talking. What I'm trying to say is, many people gradually realize how busy their minds are. And if you do practice enough, you will be able to sit for a long time. But this comes with its own problems as well. You see, it's not just self-deception that makes meditation hard, but also the physical discomfort felt in the body.
So the answers here are self-deception and physical discomfort, or just discomfort. But notice how they use the word not and but yet it was still correct. Let's take a closer look. So the speaker said it's not just self-deception that makes meditation hard, but also the physical discomfort felt in the body. Okay, so that's just one to keep an ear out for, and this stuff just requires practice. All right, let's recap those 4 ways that you can make a silly mistake, or the 4 distractors in IELTS listening. Number 1, similar sounding words like Austria and Australia. Number 2, words already mentioned like truck, but the answer was actually biplane. Number 3, synonyms like mental health or psychological well-being. They mean the same thing. And number 4, negatives, where there's a negation with the word not or avoid or never or a prefix that makes a negative. Cool, thanks very much for that. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hopefully you learned some great tips for IELTS listening so you won't make some silly mistakes.